Under the blinding light of a crystal chandelier, in the hushed expanse of a corporate boardroom that smelled faintly of polished wood and sterile money, a storm erupted. A man in a tailored navy suit slammed his palm on the table, his voice reverberating against the glass walls. He was a man of vast power and cold control, a man used to commanding silence, but now his words burned with helpless rage. "My children are broken, and no one can fix them," he thundered. The words fell heavy into the air. A group of executives, attorneys, and physicians exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to contradict him. At the far end of the table, two fragile figures sat in silence, his twin children, beautiful, porcelain-faced, innocent, but their wide eyes carried a distance no one could cross. They had been born into wealth beyond measure, yet their world was sealed off in silence. The boy clutched a toy car that made no sound. The girl clutched her brother's hand, as though he was the only anchor in her soundless universe. They did not hear their father's rage. They did not hear the world that whispered, hummed, and sang outside their unreachable walls. They only felt vibrations, the tremors of fury in the air, but they could not name them. And in that room filled with diamonds, silk, and ego, no one noticed the quiet shadow standing at the door. A woman with dark skin, her uniform plain, her shoes worn from years of walking, her hands scarred from labor. She carried a mop bucket that left a faint trail of soap and water, the faint smell of lemon clinging to her. Her eyes, however, held something that pierced deeper than polished marble or gilded frames. She had been invisible to them for weeks, a cleaner assigned to the mansion where marble staircases twisted like frozen rivers and gold-framed portraits stared down with haughty disdain. They had never asked her name. They only noticed when the floor shone. But today, though she tried to move quietly, the man's furious gaze cut toward her. "What are you standing there for?" His voice cracked like a whip. "Do your job. Don't just linger." The cleaner lowered her gaze. She wanted to retreat, but her eyes drifted once more toward the twins. She saw the girl's tiny fingers tracing invisible patterns on the polished table, the boy pressing the toy car again and again against the surface, yearning for a sound it could not make. Something inside her stirred, something she had buried long ago. Her name was Evelyn. Years ago, Evelyn had been a music teacher in a small, sunlit school. Her classroom had smelled of chalk dust and pine wood from battered old desks. She had lived for the moment when children's voices rose together, shy at first, then blooming into harmony. But war, poverty, and loss had stolen that life from her. She had buried her husband in a land too far from here, carried her young daughter across borders in search of safety, only to lose her, too, to an illness she could not afford to treat. What remained was her silence, her grief, and her survival. She no longer taught. She cleaned. But when she looked at those twins, she did not see brokenness. She saw possibility. She saw the same desperate longing she had once seen in her students, the hunger to connect. Evelyn did not speak. Not then. Not when the millionaire boss's wrath swept the room like wildfire, scorching anyone who dared to breathe. She simply turned back to her mop and disappeared into the shadows once again. But that night, as the mansion's lights dimmed and silence pressed upon the halls, she began to plan. The children wandered the halls like ghosts in silk pajamas, their tiny footsteps absorbed by Persian rugs. They were watched by nannies, guards, and therapists who all tried, in sterile ways, to bridge the gap. Flashcards, sign language, endless attempts. But nothing seemed to unlock them fully. Their father's patience eroded with each passing day, and his anger deepened into bitterness. It was during one of those quiet nights that Evelyn took a risk. She found the twins sitting at the base of the grand staircase, the boy tracing the banister with his fingers, the girl rocking gently as though trying to soothe herself. Evelyn crouched down, her knees creaking, her mop set aside. From the pocket of her uniform, she pulled out a small wooden box. It was worn smooth with time, the lid carved with delicate flowers. She had carried it across oceans, through sorrow and hunger. Inside it was her last treasure, a small hand-carved flute. She lifted it to her lips. She did not play a melody, not yet. Instead, she tapped it softly against the floor. The vibrations traveled through the marble. The boy stopped. His eyes widened. He touched the ground. The girl looked at him, then at Evelyn. Evelyn smiled gently. She tapped again. So, this time, she let the faintest whisper of air escape the flute. Not a song, just breath. The twins leaned closer. Though they could not hear, they could feel something stirring, faint vibrations in their chests. Night after night, Evelyn returned. She never spoke, never imposed. She only created rhythms, tapping, vibrating, humming softly into the instrument so that the children could place their hands against her throat and feel the tremor. They began to mimic her, first shyly, then with growing excitement. The boy drummed his toy car against the table, matching her rhythm. The girl placed her hand on the window pane, waiting for the echo of vibration. The mansion, once filled with sterile attempts and heavy silence, began to pulse with a new kind of music, a music that could not be heard but could be felt. And the twins began to change. They laughed, not with sound, but with trembling shoulders and glowing eyes. They began to sign to each other in ways no therapist had taught them, weaving their own language of rhythm and motion. They started to respond to Evelyn's gentle cues, their world expanding from silent shadows to vibrant vibration. The millionaire noticed. At first, he dismissed it as coincidence. He had hired the best specialists, spent fortunes on medical equipment, chased cures across countries. But nothing had brought change. And yet the cleaner, the one he had never acknowledged, was stirring something inside his children. One evening, returning early from a deal that had drained him, he paused at the entrance of the grand hall. What he saw broke him in ways money never could. His children were sitting on the marble floor, their small hands pressed against Evelyn's throat as she hummed into the flute. Their faces glowed with awe. They signed something to her. A gesture he could not understand, but Evelyn did. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. His heart clenched. For the first time, he saw his children not as broken but as whole, alive in a way he had never recognized. And he saw Evelyn not as a cleaner, but as a bridge. But pride is a cruel enemy. The next morning, he confronted her. His voice was sharp, trembling with unspoken gratitude he refused to name. "What are you doing with my children? You are here to clean, not. Whatever this is," Evelyn did not flinch. She looked at him with calm eyes, the weight of all her losses steadying her voice. "They are not broken," she said softly. "They are listening, just not in the way you expect." Her words struck him harder than any insult. For days, he wrestled with them. His empire had been built on control, on bending the world to his will. But his children were teaching him something else, that some things could not be controlled, only embraced. The breakthrough came weeks later. The twins stood before him, their eyes bright, their hands moving rapidly in their new hybrid language. Evelyn translated not with words, but with gestures. And then, for the first time, the twins pressed their tiny palms against his chest, feeling the vibrations of his heart. Her father crumbled. He fell to his knees, clutching them, silent tears carving through his pride. From that day, the mansion changed. Its silence was no longer heavy, suffocating. It was filled with rhythm, with vibrations, with a new kind of music. Evelyn continued to guide the twins, not as a cleaner, but as their teacher. And the man who once thundered in anger now sat quietly, learning from his children's hands, his empire suddenly small in comparison to the vastness of their world. There were whispers among the wealthy elite, questions about why a simple cleaner was now ever present at the millionaire's side. But he no longer cared for whispers. His children had found their voices, not in sound, but in the strength of vibration, rhythm, and love. One evening, standing on the balcony overlooking the glittering city, he spoke words that would echo in Evelyn's memory forever. "I thought wealth was power, but I was wrong. Silent dignity, that is the strongest voice of all." And as the twins laughed beside them, their shoulders trembling with joy, the city below seemed to fade. What remained was a family, broken, mended, transformed, because sometimes the greatest music is not heard, it is felt. The story of Evelyn spread quietly, told not in headlines, but in whispers of respect. A cleaner who became a teacher, twins who found their voice in silence, A father who learned that pride is hollow without love. And for those who heard it, the message lingered. The world's richest treasures are not bought with gold. They are found in the unseen, the unspoken, in the unshakable power of a heart that listens.